Hi again, and welcome back to Doggone RV'N, Travel with my girls. Well, it goes without saying that 2020 is a year nobody wants to relive. It was shit. But how did it affect our travels? Well, stay tuned and we'll let you know. Our trip started with camping at Cape Disappointment State Park on the southern coastal tip of Washington State in a driving Pacific storm. Surviving that, we traveled south to Blue Heron Cheese Factory in Tillamook, Oregon, a favorite stop going down the Oregon coast for wine and all kind of assorted condiments. We soon found ourselves in Yuma, Arizona at Mitre Lakes for a while. We explored 3 BLM campgrounds in the immediate area, including the huge Mitre Lake area, while down there for a few weeks. There were controlled burns going on in the area that gave us some beautiful sunsets in the area at night. The main open campground area by the lake had been improved since last year and was a very nice improvement. While staying at Mitre Lake, I got to test out some of my RV inventions like my drop-down side table. I also decided to install a new medicine cabinet in my bathroom. So with a small pry bar and a steak knife, I removed the old mirror, cleaned it up, and installed my medicine cabinet, which I love having now. We then just spent more time exploring the Mitre Lakes area near our camp. Next, we were off to Kofa Wildlife Refuge, north of Yuma, off of Highway 95 going to Quartzsite, to wait for my travel buddy coming down from Washington State. There were several large established campgrounds in this area to choose from. We chose a space with a great view of the mountain of the Palm Canyon, where the fabled palms were hiding. The dogs loved the area, but I had to keep very close eye on them because of the cholla cactus that were like Velcro sticking to everything that lightly bumped into them. Desert sunsets are among some of the most fantastic I have witnessed, and always love seeing them. The next afternoon, we drove to the trailhead and headed up to the ravine, making it to the turnoff sign to the palms. We viewed them with our binoculars. Having seen videos of others scrambling up the steep crack in the mountains after crossing a deep ravine between us, I decided I'd seen enough palms and I did not have to do the scramble up the mountain to see these too. The moon was soon telling us it was time to head back to camp for the evening. The next morning we left camp and went a few miles further south on 95 to the Kings Canyon cutoff to go into the vast center of the Kofa Refuge. You may as well be on the moon, was the feeling it invoked in me as far as the emptiness and loneliness you felt. After a stay there, we were on to Saddle Mountain, a great place to stay with interesting mountains to gaze upon. We were all very comfortable here for a few days with plenty of room to hike and roam. We then took off deeper into the hills and mountains in search of petroglyphs and camping. We entered the National Refuge and stayed at Gilbert Ray Campgrounds, which was very nice. An added surprise was this campground was only 15 minutes away from the huge old Tucson movie studio, which was very interesting. To wander through all the old movie sets and TV Western sets that are still in use at times today. We then made it to the southeastern corner of Arizona to Bowie, Arizona, and Indian Rock BLM campgrounds, which was fantastic. We found a really nice little place with a view of the fabled Indian Rock. And there were also many other strange formations around us, like Split Rock, the rock with a zipper in it, and either a duckbill or an old 1700s shoe rock. The dogs loved the rocks because they were easily climbed on by them because of their rough texture. By now, 3.5 months into our 6-month planned road trip, the coronavirus had finally encircled us. We'd kept ahead of it so far, but we finally got backed into a corner in the BLM land here in Arizona, with the rangers keeping close tabs on everyone that was there. So rather than being moved on from BLM land to BLM land, my buddy and I decided that we'd had a good run and it was time to go home. So packed up the dogs and our gear, and we headed back to Washington State. Once home again, I still had one item I had to take care of, and that was a gathering in Montana that was going to be the end of my 6-month road trip that was still active. So we repacked and took off again. We continued in the eastern Washington to the Ginkgo Petrified Forest State Park and its view of the Columbia. It had petroglyphs collected for a view that was very nice, and we were soon in Ephrata at Winchester Winery, and that was a very nice place to stay, part of the Harvest Host Assembly. We had a really nice place to stay in the shade, grass for the dogs, and then we went inside to their very comfortable tasting room where they showed us through their facility of how they make their wine, bottle it, label it, and ship it out, all as a family organization. The wine was very good. The seating area and the winery tasting table was very nice, and it was an overall very pleasant stay. The dogs really loved it, and at night you could hear the crickets and frogs. We then traveled east into Idaho and visited the Catalda Mission, which was open, and I always love going to this place here and seeing the artifacts and touring the grounds, which are very well kept. And they also have the parish house open now and a brand new little museum down below the mission. We followed along to Wallace, went into town, saw the mining exhibits, and toured the 2-story old train depot they have there, which was very informative and enjoyed going through it. We then continued on to the 50,000 silver dollar casino and store, and boondocking in the back was free. We've continued into eastern Montana to the Missouri Headwaters State Park and explored that area full of Lewis and Clark history, and camped out in the state park there, which was rather small but still nice. The markings of how all 3 rivers come together to form the headwaters of the Missouri was very informative, and it is on my YouTube video. Here's a site of one of the lookouts, and there was always plenty of cactus and flowers. I then rendezvoused at Spring Creek Campgrounds just outside of Big Timber, Montana, for a group gathering of Pleasureway RV'ers for the West Coast. Although this year fewer campers showed up because of the COVID scare, there were still several people who came anyway because of plans already made. Still, it seemed as if the COVID fear had not penetrated this town, because I only saw 2 elderly people with masks on. Other than that, it was just as typical of a festival as it was the year before, which was nice to see. After that, I returned home to where the dogs and I, with summer still ahead of us, decided to go on a few hikes into the high alpine lakes in the Cascades near us. So I got their dog packs out, my pack out, and we hit about 3 different alpine lakes, each a longer trail and each at a higher altitude. And it felt great to be out in the wilderness again. I also received word that I'd been okayed for my 3rd operation to repair the damages done by a radical cancer operation and 7 weeks of over-radiation therapy. So I went through that. I recuperated quite quickly from that and felt so good that we decided to go on a weekend campout to a state park on the Washington coast. After we returned from that, I had another call and had found out I had been okayed for my final, hopefully, and 4th operation to finally repair the damages done by that radical cancer operation and 7 weeks of over-radiation I received a few years back. So the girls and I decided to pack up and go on one last hike into the high alpine lakes in our area. And this one was a doozy. It was the highest in elevation and had some of the best views. It was fantastic. At times the trail seemed to climb forever, as if there was no end to it, but then we'd burst out into areas of bright, colorful wildflowers, and with views of fabulous Mount Rainier right in our face, as if we could reach out and touch it. And then, finally, coming up to the top of the mountain, we looked across and saw the lake we had hiked to just the last weekend. We could see the top of the mound on the left at which we stood last week, and now we'll be higher than that, looking down upon the lake from this perspective. The girls, as always, even at 11 years of age, were fabulous hikers and just loved climbing the trail and exploring. Here we are in a field of wild lupin that covered the entire side of the mountain. It's just beautiful. And now it's time to head back to the truck and back home for rest and relaxation and dream of trips and adventures to come.